My beloved, if you are hoping I will extinguish the fire immediately, the next words may surprise you, because what I am about to say is not "I will pull you out of every furnace right now," but something deeper, something truer. I step in with you. The fire you are in does not make me step back. On the contrary, the hottest places are where my nearness is revealed most clearly. You are used to thinking that I only appear in the pleasant days, in the gentle moments, in the prayers that are answered quickly. But I want you to know that the burning nights, the suffocating hours, the seasons when you feel like you are about to crack, those are the places where my footprints are darkest upon your life. I do not make the fire disappear. I step into the flame so that you will know I am closer than the pain. I do not stand at the rim of the furnace and shout from afar, I am right beside you. So close that if you quiet your heart, you will notice my breath mingling with your own hurried breathing. There are moments when you look at the burning circumstances around you and ask, if you love me, why don't you put out the fire? I hear that question. I do not get angry. I do not rebuke you. I do not push you away. I remember the 3 young men in the furnace in Babylon, those who were thrown into the flames because they would not bow to an image that was not me. I did not stop them from being bound. I did not prevent them from being pushed into the fire. I did not make the flames vanish before they fell in. But when the king looked into the furnace, he did not see 3 men, he saw 4, and the 4th looked like the Son of God. I tell you this not as an ancient tale, but as a reminder. I still do this with you. There are things I allow, not because I abandon you, but because I have already prepared myself to stand right in the middle with you. You see ropes burning away. I see your faith being freed from every reliance that is not me. You feel the heat. I see the glory that will shine from a place you thought only smelled of smoke. I know there are times when you desire only one thing: escape. Escape from the pressure. Escape from the room. Escape from the conversation that tightens your chest and exhausts your heart. You beg me to open a door, to move you away from the ground that grows hotter each day. But my child, there are seasons in which I love you in another way. I do not lift you out of the flames. I do something even more astonishing. I step in and remain there with you. I let you feel your limits so you will discover that where your strength ends is where mine begins. I let you feel the heat. But I do not let the flames consume you. I let you watch the things that once supported you burn away, so you can discover that the true foundation beneath your feet is not people, not strategies, not plans, but me alone. I do not make the fire vanish at once, because there are things that can only fall away when the heat makes them unable to cling any longer. I see the look in your eyes when you think you are alone in battle. You imagine yourself standing exposed while the flames rise higher, while I, if I exist anywhere, must surely be far away. But if you would pause for a single beat, you would notice another form moving in rhythm with you. You think you are staggering, but I am holding your back. You think your feet keep moving on their own, but my hand is around your ankle so it does not break. The flames touch everything else, but they cannot reach the place where I cover your soul. Even when sweat runs down from tension, even when tears fall from exhaustion, there is still a hidden place within you that cannot be destroyed. That is where I dwell. In that place, the fire has no authority. In that place, only I reign. I do not promise you will always feel okay. I promise that in the moment you think you are about to break, you will find a strength that does not belong to you. I do not deny that fire hurts. I do not ask you to pretend you feel nothing. I do not want you to wear a forced smile while your insides are burning. I receive your cry. I hear the lowest groan that never makes it into words. I do not ask you to call darkness light, or call the furnace a peaceful garden, but I invite you to call me the one who is in it with you. When you whisper, "Where are you?" the answer does not fall down from a distant sky. It rises from the hottest center. I am here. And once you know I am here, the fire no longer has the right to define your experience. The flames still burn, but they are no longer the main story. The main story becomes, I am closer than the pain. My child, let me tell you a spiritual secret. Fire does not only expose what is weak, it reveals what is precious. Gold is not created in fire, but in fire the distinction between true gold and impurity becomes visible. I look at your life as a master craftsman holds the crucible, steady and unhurried, without spilling. I know exactly what temperature is enough to separate what does not belong to you from your soul, without destroying what I have placed within you. I do not surrender you to the flames. I use the flames as an instrument in my hand. I do not stand outside, issuing commands, then walking away. I grip the pot with my hands, my eyes never leaving you. Every impurity rising to the surface is not proof that you are terrible. It is only proof that the gold in you is being prepared to shine brighter. When you remember the stories of Scripture, do not only notice the miracle at the end. Pay attention to the journey inside the fire. Those 3 young men entered the furnace because they chose me over safety. You are the same. There are furnaces you enter simply because you chose to be faithful to me, chose not to compromise, chose not to kneel before what the world considers normal. I see that choice. I know that cost. And because of that, I never let you pay it alone. Fire can burn the ropes, but it cannot erase the person I love. On the contrary, inside the fire, my image in you becomes clearer. Every time you choose to trust me in the irrational, every time you hold to me in the tangled mess, the lines of my face are etched deeper within you. So, when you ask why the fire has not gone out yet, let the first answer not be, maybe he has abandoned me, but perhaps he is closer than I think. Do not rush to conclude that the presence of flames means the absence of me. Sometimes, the very place you think is proof that I left is where I stand closest. I do not promise you a life without heat. I promise that the flames do not have the right to give the final verdict on you. I am the one who does that, and I have decided you belong to me. You are precious. You are being refined, not discarded. When the fire rises around your life, your first instinct is to shrink back, believing you are about to be burned, that everything you have will be swept away, that you will emerge from this season with empty hands and an empty heart. I hear that fear. I understand how you tremble imagining what might be lost, what relationships may no longer remain, what securities you once held tightly may be taken away. But there is something I need you to see clearly. The fire is not targeting you first, it is targeting the bindings that have grown around you without you noticing. There are things you have carried for so long you thought they were part of yourself, when in truth, they were only invisible chains. When the heat rises, the first things to burn are not your essence, but the things that were never yours to begin with. The fire does not destroy you. It destroys the shackles that once trapped you. It burns away lies you believed for too long, fears you wore like false armor, dependencies you accepted because you did not trust you could live without them. Remember the times you felt you couldn't live if you had to let go of a person, a habit, an environment, and yet, after a season of burning heat, what you thought you could never leave behind was gone, and you were still here, still breathing, still walking, even lighter than before. That was not an accident. It was the picture of shackles burned through in the furnace. Some bondages only reveal their true nature under testing. Some forms of dependence only show their face when the hot wind blows. Fire does not invent chains. It only keeps them from hiding any longer. Those evenings when you lay down with your heart squeezed tight by the obsession with others' opinions, by the fear of being left behind, by the need to please everyone that was the sound of links clinging to your soul. When I allow a hot season to pass over you, it is not to burn you to ash, but to force loose whatever has attached itself in the wrong place, so you may know you were made to walk free, not to crawl with hands and feet bound. I see a spiritual scene your eyes have never seen in front of the fire. Your figure appears with cords wrapped around your wrists, your ankles, your back, your chest. These are the expectations of others, the obsession with failure, the labels from your past you unconsciously agreed with. When the fire touches them, those bound places burn most intensely. So you assume you are about to be destroyed. In reality, it is the cords that are beginning to weaken. Every time you feel you cannot bear it any longer, and then discover you are still here, it is as if another link has fallen to the ground. The clang of chains dropping in the spiritual realm often sounds like loss in your emotions. But in heaven, it is recorded as a milestone of freedom. I am not indifferent as the fire licks at your life. I am overseeing each flame, making sure it touches exactly what must burn and stops at the line it cannot cross. I allow it to destroy the things that have bent you over, but I do not allow it to touch the identity I have named in you. You may be thinking, but the pain is real. The loss is real. The tears are real. How can that be only chains? I do not deny that your wounds are deep and real. I only want you to go one layer further and ask, who am I becoming after this has burned away? Do you still bow under those contemptuous looks? Are you still willing to compromise, to keep a relationship that does not honor your soul? Do you still fall asleep every night under the weight of, I am worthless, if, through the fire, those answers begin to change? Then the fire has not destroyed you. It has destroyed the prison you were locked inside. I do not rejoice over your tears, but I do rejoice over every wall that collapses, every lock that snaps, every bar that drops. One day you will look back on those things and call them not disasters, but the days the prison doors opened. I know that. In the middle of it, you just want the fire to stop. No one standing in a furnace prays for the flames to grow stronger. I do not demand that of you. But even while you tremble, I invite you to allow one small spark of hope to catch in your heart. Maybe what is burning is not me, but what binds me. Look back over the years. How many times did you think you were losing everything, only to realize you were losing only what had been devouring your time, your strength, your self-respect? How many times did a closed door make you feel rejected? Yet that very closing forced you out of a toxic context where your soul would have slowly gone dim if you had stayed fire. In my hands always carries two actions at once, to burn and to set free. It burns away what no longer has a place, and releases what truly belongs to you, but has been trapped behind layers of ash. I want you to picture yourself stepping out of a hot season. Your clothes may be worn, your hair tangled, your eyes still red from crying, but your wrists are bare, your ankles unbound, your back straighter, your steps lighter. That is the image I am moving toward, even while everything still seems to smoke around you. Every time you let go of an obsession, an assumption, a compromise, another length of chain is eaten away. Every time you dare to say, I do not need that to be myself in you. The fire wins another battle over what once ruled you. And though you cannot yet see it all, I have already seen the day you walk as someone no longer jerked around by the past or by the fear of the future. On that day, you will understand that my refusal to extinguish the flames immediately was not negligence, but the strategy of one who sees beyond your temporary comfort and aims at lasting freedom for your soul. There are moments when it is not the heat that makes you shake, but the thought that everyone has left, that no one understands, that if you collapse in the fire, no hand will reach out to save you. The flames outside are only part of it. The blaze in your mind, the thought I am alone, is the fiercest fire of all. I know this. I have seen the moment you sat in a chair with your hands clutching your head, not because the room was too hot, but because your heart felt like it was burning to the point of suffocation. I heard that long sigh, the one you shared with no one because you thought it was useless. You told yourself, no one knows, no one sees, no one cares. That is when I came in, not with a loud sound, but with a presence heavy and soft, like a blanket over your shoulders. The most painful part is not the fire itself, but the belief that you are in it alone, and that belief is what I come to break. You do not realize that before the flames rose, I was already there. Before people walked away, I had already arrived. Before you thought to call my name, I had already taken your hand in the dark. You cannot see me because the fire makes everything flicker and warp, but I see your form clearly in the midst of the sparks. I do not wait for you to call before I come. I come before you know you need me. I do not wait for you to prove your strength before I hold you. I hold you so you can stand. There are moments when all you can do is bow your head. Close your eyes. Press your lips together. No prayers. No words. Only the desire for it to pass. I want you to know that in that very moment, my hand is wrapped firmly around your wrist, not allowing you to fall into despair. You do not have to hold yourself together. I have been holding you long before you knew you were weak. You once thought, if you are really here, why don't I feel anything? But feelings are not my only evidence. There are seasons when I do not come as blazing fire or rushing wind. I come as a warmth so subtle you notice it only in hindsight. There are days you assume you survived by sheer stubbornness, by willpower, by hardened habit, when in truth what kept you from collapsing was an unseen hand. I do not require you to feel me in order for me to be present. I ask you to know that I am present. Whether you feel me or not, your emotions flicker like a flame in the wind, but my faithfulness stands like rock unshaken, unfaded. I break the lie of loneliness not with complicated explanations, but by staying. You expect me to explain reasons, lay out plans, announce each step. Instead, I choose another way. I stand exactly where you stand. When the flames shift, my shadow blocks part of the heat. When the smoke rises, I lean so you can breathe. You do not hear my voice, yet you keep surviving day after day. That is the sign I am there. You think you are the one holding yourself together, but when you are too exhausted and your hands fall, you are still standing. What is holding you up? Not your will, not other people. It is the fact that I have placed my hand behind your back, refusing to let you fall. There was a time when you asked, if you are here, why do I still hurt my child? There are pains that do not vanish even when I am beside you, but there is a great difference. Pain no longer has the final word. It is no longer the main storyteller. When you realize that I am there, the fire is still hot, but it is no longer hell. It becomes a forge. When I am there, you are not consumed. you are refined. When I am there, tears are not evidence of failure. They are evidence that you are still alive, still feeling, still facing what is true. When I am there, breathing deeply in smoke becomes worship, and standing steady in flame becomes a silent declaration stronger than a song. There are things you have never told anyone, not because you did not want to, but because you could not find someone who would understand. You fear pitying eyes, fear formulaic advice, fear being misunderstood even further. I do not ask you to share with people to earn compassion. I invite you to share with me, not so that I may know I already know, but so that you may know you no longer carry it alone. I hear even when you cannot form the words. I understand even when you have no language. I touch you even when you cannot lift your eyes. Every sigh from you is a prayer in my ears. What I am doing is not putting out the fire immediately, but destroying the idea that you were abandoned in the fire. I did not leave you. I have never left you. Even when everything collapsed, I was standing there. Even when the ones you loved turned away, I held the door so you would not be swallowed. Even when you could not feel anything, I was there. When you open your eyes inside the flames and discover another silhouette, you will see what you needed most was not the fire to end, but a hand to hold. There is a truth that only fire can teach. Not everything you carry has equal worth. When the flames rose, you panicked because you thought the fire would take everything. But fire does not take all. Fire only takes what is not real. In the first days, you only saw loss. You heard the crackling of things you had held tightly. You tried to grasp them with bare hands. But the tighter you held, the quicker they crumbled like dry straw. You thought it was tragedy, but it was discernment. Fire does not come to destroy you. Fire comes to show you what is true and what is false. Some things burn quickly because they were never heavy enough to hold you. At first, as the fire swept through, you panicked. Why is this gone too? Why is that falling away? You looked at the ashes and thought you had failed. You did not know that those ashes were proof of a miracle. The things that clung to you, fear, fragility, self-protection, depending on others to feel valuable, were being burned off. Fire does not touch real gold, but fire consumes the dust. The false cords, the labels others pinned on you. You lived long in a safe zone where everything looked fine. But not everything that looks fine is good. Some things only look beautiful under bright lights, but when the fire comes, the paint peels and you see rotten wood beneath. Fire does not do this to shame you, but to free you from the false thrones you leaned on. When you look back, you will recognize this. The true things never disappear. My love does not burn. Your calling does not burn. The nature I placed in you from the beginning does not burn. What is true is only made brighter by fire. You thought you had lost everything, but when the ashes settled, you saw a small glimmer in the black dust. That was gold. The gold had always been there, but it was covered by the dust of expectations, comparisons, and other people's words. When I allowed the fire to blow through, it was not to make you suffer, but to show you what you had not seen. You have gold, and the gold must shine. Fire does not ask whether you are ready. Fire simply comes. But I do not allow fire to come to consume you. I allow fire to come to divide. What is truly yours remains. What only clung to you falls away. I know the sting of what falls. I see the tears drip into the ashes. You say, if only this had not burned. But I know that if it had not burned, it would have bound your feet. Straw feels like protection, but it is fuel. You used it to stand, but it could not bear the weight of your soul. I did not abandon you in that moment. I stood and watched the flames consume the false, and I kept the gold for you. Sometimes you only understand at the end. When smoke clears and ashes cool, you look back and realize that what you thought were foundations, habits, relationships, titles, roles were only straw. What you must hold on to is not what burned, but what remained after the burning. Fire teaches you that what is truly valuable is never threatened. Fire teaches you not to trust in things that can burn. Fire teaches you that loss is not always failure. Sometimes loss is salvation. When you embrace that truth, a strange peace enters. You no longer fight the fire, you begin to stand still in it. Because you know the fire is doing good work for you. You see what I see in fire. The false burns. The true shines. And you begin to view life differently, not with eyes afraid of loss, but with eyes expecting what is real. You no longer cling, no longer plead to keep the beautiful straw, because you now know beauty is not the same as truth. You no longer ask me to put out the fire, you begin to ask me to make the gold shine brighter. There is something fire does better than any sermon or advice. It removes the paint and reveals the grain of the wood. I am not looking for a perfect version of you. I am not waiting for you to stand upright. Speak well. Behave flawlessly before I draw near. I look for truth, and truth is often not pretty, but it is real. In the fire, there is nowhere left to hide. Masks that were carefully carved in peaceful days melt in the heat. Smooth answers are no longer smooth. The sentences you told yourself to avoid pain no longer work. Fire exposes where you are not whole, not strong, not clean, not to humiliate you, but to release you. You thought I wanted you strong, but I want you true. For from truth, strength grows. If you paint fresh shine over rotten wood, the house will collapse in the first gust of wind. I do not call you to build with paint, I call you to build with stone. When the fire comes, the paint disappears and you stand there, looking at yourself in a mirror, no longer fogged. This is you. Weak where you are weak. Broken where you are broken. Cracked where you are cracked. You see the fractures you never dared to face. You see the places you avoid in conversation. The fears you hide beneath a smile. You thought you had to deny these to be spiritual, but I invite you to face them, because the place where you are weakest is the place I come closest. Fire does not demand perfection. Fire demands honesty. Everything else burns. Clever excuses burn. False confidence burns. Even prayers used as shields to avoid real emotion burn. I do not require you to say the right sentence or follow the right formula. I want to hear your true voice, even if it trembles. You do not need to be strong before me. There is no use pretending to be strong in a storm. The wind knows you are shaking. I knew that before you ever spoke. There are moments in the fire when you cry with tears you have never let anyone see. Those tears are not weakness, they are truth. And every drop matters. You no longer say, I'm fine. It's nothing. You begin to say, I am hurting. Lord, it is there, in that fragile place, that the miracle happens. For I do not wait for you to become strong before I come. I come to help you become strong. Not when you conquer, but when you admit you cannot conquer on your own. Truth makes you lighter, because you no longer have to strain. The days of straining have been long. You strained to prove worth, to be worthy of someone's eyes, to avoid being dismissed. But before me, you do not need to strain. Fire removes that layer. When the layer burns away, you can see the real wood beneath, cracked, grooved, with a history, and I place my hand on it, without contempt, without blame. I call those cracks by another name, the places where the rain of grace will soak deepest. When you are honest with yourself, healing begins. Weakness is not the end. Weakness is the beginning. A young tree can be bent, a hardened one cannot. A soft heart can receive, a hard heart will crack. I do not require perfection in the fire, I require truth. For from truth, I build strength. From tears, I make living water. From weakness, I make a warrior. And when the fire goes out, what remains is not the ash of the false, but the quiet glow of real gold, gold that has passed through the flame. You once thought you were only dust, an ordinary clay vessel, surviving each day and trying not to break. You did not know there was gold within you, not gold you created, but gold I placed there from the beginning, without fire. That gold lies hidden in the dirt. No one sees it, not even you. You thought you had nothing worth showing, nothing bright, nothing that would make anyone wonder. You learned to live humbly by shrinking, hoping no one would ask too deeply or look too closely. But I did not make you to bury treasure. I made you so treasure could be revealed. When the fire comes, it does not ask your permission. It blows into the places you have avoided, and you see dust rising. You think it is loss, but that dust is covering. When the dust lifts, you catch a glimpse of something shining. At first, you do not believe. You think it is only the reflection of flame, but the light does not disappear when the fire calms. Something inside you shines brighter than fire. You bend down, searching, and you find yourself touching a treasure you never knew existed. The fire did not create the gold, the fire revealed it. The gold was there before the fire, before the tears, before all the years you believed you were not worth anything. Without fire, gold is still gold, but you would never know. The life I give you is not merely tasks completed, days passed, breaths coming and going. I give you spiritual dignity. You carry something precious. In my hands, you are not ordinary. You are not merely clay. You are clay filled with treasure. Many times you have felt like broken earth, with nothing to offer, nothing to show. But fire does not burn gold. Fire burns the dry earth. Fire cracks the shell, and through those cracks, light escapes. You once feared the cracks. You tried to cover them, paint them, patch them with jokes, with false strength, with endless busyness. But cracks are not shame. Cracks are where the light comes out. Cracks are gates. Not everyone understands that, but you will understand after you have passed through fire. The places you thought were weakest are exactly where I place the treasure closest to the surface, so that with just a little heat, it appears. You do not need to search for gold in far places. The gold is in you, and fire only helps you see what I have always seen. The furnace is not meant to confuse you, it is meant to amaze you. You thought you would die, but what dies is the dust, the straw, the covering. The gold still stands, shrinking back from nothing, retreating from nothing, fading for no one. When the smoke clears, you stand before yourself, and for the first time in your life, you understand this is what I see when I look at you. Not soil, but treasure in soil. Not weakness, but potential within weakness. Not brokenness, but the place where I press gold into the cracks. No one can remove treasure from where I have set it. And fire is the tool I use to show you your own worth, not based on the eyes of people, but based on the gaze of heaven. Many times you think fire only brings heat, fear, and lonely places no one else understands. But in the place of highest temperature, you do not realize that I am standing closest. Your face feels hot, your throat dry, your heart pounding. But what you do not see with your physical eyes is my breath touching your forehead, not from afar, not through an angel, not from a safe distance. I am right there. You shiver not only because of the fire, but because of a strange presence, hot but not frightening, strong but not shattering. Heat is not the sign that I am far, heat is the sign that I am near. In the furnace, others only see fire, but you will see a figure beside you. That is not imagination. That is a spiritual reality many people know only in words, but not in experience. When the heat steals your breath, I lean down and blow gently. My breath is not loud, not theatrical, not a sermon. It is a soft breeze on your forehead, keeping you standing. You do not see my face clearly, but you feel my rhythm slow, peaceful, steady. While you tremble, I do not tremble. I keep my steps firm, half a step in front of you, so you can place your feet where I have stood. That nearness is what keeps you from panic. When you are near the flame, you often ask, "Where are you?" I am exactly where you are. I do not wait for you to escape the fire before I arrive. If I waited until the flames died before appearing, you would think you escaped by your own strength. But I want you to know something else. You do not survive because you are stronger than the fire. You survive because I am in the fire with you. There are moments when you think you are abandoned, but in truth, I am so close that my breath touches your forehead. When you cannot pray, when words stop in your throat, when no sound forms, I hear your breath, because your breath touches mine. The distance between us is so small that the fire cannot pass through. Not everyone sees this. Those outside only see the flames and assume no one could survive. But you are inside the fire, and you see something they cannot see. There is a fourth figure. You do not know his name in that moment, but your soul knows. He is not an idea. He is a person. And when you turn, not to question, not to complain, but simply to seek, you see his eyes. The fire does not swallow that light. The heat does not blur that gaze. From those eyes, peace pours into your chest like cold water over burning coals. This closeness itself is the true miracle. I do not make the fire vanish in an instant. I make you able to stand in the fire. And that ability to stand does not come from your own strength, but from companionship. If I stood far away, you would tremble until you fell. If I stood far away, you would see nothing but flames. But I stand close, very close. Close enough that my breath brushes your forehead. Close enough that you cannot lose your way. Close enough that you cannot truly believe you are alone. And when you realize this, a deep peace begins to spread through your chest, not because the fire has lessened, but because you are no longer alone in it. When the flames rise, the first thing you try to do is tense up and become stronger. You grit your teeth, clench your fists, tell yourself you must stand tall, endure, prove you are not weak. Yet every time you try to be strong on your own, you burn out faster. The fire does not require you to be strong. The fire only requires you to be near. There is a simple truth that the furnace teaches you. A child does not need to know how to resist lightning. It only needs to run into its father's arms. It is not the child who conquers the storm by its strength. It is the distance to the arms that hold it. What keeps you is not spiritual muscle or iron will, but nearness. When you come closer, thunder may crack the sky, but the sound of a heartbeat in the Father's chest calms you. That is what I do for you in the fire. You once thought you had to learn skills. Strengthen your faith. Gather all your experience in peaceful seasons so that when the fire came, you would win because you were prepared. But the fire was never designed to test your preparation. It was designed to remind you of your refuge. You will not overcome by a list of lessons memorized, nor by the verses you can recite. You overcome by distance the closer you are to me. The less power the fire has, one person standing far from me will tremble before the same flames. Another standing close to me will breathe in peace. There will be moments in the furnace when you no longer have strength to read scripture, to sing, or even to speak. All you can do is lean your head on my shoulder. That is not failure. That is you finding the right place at the right time. I do not wait for you to become strong before I hold you. I hold you so that strength may be born. Pressure melts away when you come closer. You do not need to defeat the fire. You only need to lean on me within it. When you lean on me, you notice something strange. The heat remains, but it no longer threatens the way it once did. It is like a child sleeping in his father's arms while lightning splits the sky outside the window. The house still shakes. The wind still howls. But the child does not wake. He does not sleep because the world is calm. He sleeps because he is calm in his father's arms. You do not need to know every answer, to predict every future, to understand every movement. You only need to be close to me. The pressure to explain, to manage, to hold everything together alone dissolves when you realize you were never called to carry it by yourself. What is beautiful in the fire is not your endurance, but your surrender. When you stop holding on, stop resisting, stop trying to prove yourself, warm tears begin to fall, not tears of despair, but of relief. Those tears speak the words your lips are too tired to form. I do not need to be strong, because I have a Father. So many times in your life, you believed you had to look strong so others wouldn't worry. You thought that if you broke, no one would pick you up. But I have been there all along. I know every small trembling in your heart. I know every sigh you release in the flames. And I lay my hand on your back, not to lift you out of the fire before its time, but so you will know there is a hand holding you up. Those tears are not the sign of weakness. They are the sign of trust. Rest does not come when the fire goes out. It comes when you are near. Many ask me to remove the flames, but I rarely remove the fire immediately. I remove the fear. I remove the loneliness. I remove the weight of having to endure this alone. When that burden falls off, you stand lighter in the fire. You will be surprised the same circumstance, the same storm, the same heat, but when you are near me, fear becomes a distant rumble instead of a storm inside your chest. You are not saved by your own strength. You are kept by nearness. And in that nearness, you discover something profound. Peace is not the product of circumstances, but the product of presence. You have wondered, why must I face the fire first? Why am I placed in this burning place? But you have never been pushed into the flames alone. I have never stood outside, pointing, telling you to go in. Every step you take in the furnace is matched by another step ahead of you, a step that touched the hot ash before your feet ever arrived. I do not send you where I have not been. I invite you to follow me where I have already stood firm. There is a pattern the fire etches into your memory. I go first. You do not lead the way, you are led. When you step forward, you think you are entering the unknown. But in truth, you are putting your feet into footprints already made. Those prints are not erased by the fire. Ash may cover them, but it cannot erase the path. If you look closely, you will see where the flames are darker. Those are the places where I stood longer, holding the heat back for you. I step ahead so the fire touches me before it touches you. That is not because I need to prove myself heroic, but because love behaves this way. A father does not stand at the threshold and tell his child to walk through the flame alone. He bends down, steps in first, then reaches back his hand. Follow me. Place your feet where I have placed mine. In the early days of the fire, you cannot see this. Everything is a blur in the heat. You see flames, but you do not see me clearly. You think I am silent. You think I stand at a distance. You think you are being tested to prove your worth. But as you begin to calm, as your eyes grow used to the light of the flames, you start to notice something else, a figure moving before you, slow and steady, neither rushed nor driven. Those are my steps, not yours. I do not need the furnace to know who I am. The furnace is for you to know who I am. I have always been the one who goes before. I went before Israel in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. I led them through the sea. They did not find the way on their own. So it is with you. The way through the fire is not your discovery. It is my opening. When the flames flare up, you may be afraid, but you are never lost. You are not lost in the fire because the fire is not a maze. It is a hallway I am leading you through. I go before you to measure the heat, to shield you, to block the arrows, to bring you to the other side. When you walk on hot ashes, you do not feel the full force of the heat, because my feet have been there first. My guidance in the fire is not the shout of a distant commander. I do not stand on some high cliff and call, "Come on, you can do it." I step onto the burning ground, one step, then another, and you see my back. Just follow my back. You do not need a map. You do not need a strategy. You only need to see where I stand. Whenever you feel you do not know where you are going, simply look up. When you see me, you know the way. And when you cannot see me, stand still. I will come back and place my hand on your shoulder. Because of that, fear dissolves. Not because the fire has changed, but because your point of view has. You are no longer someone being pushed into the fire, you are someone being led through it. I do not abandon you to heat and risk. I step in first, so you will know there is safety in every step. You will not be burned in the place where I have stood. You will not be destroyed in the place I have already passed through. I lead. I do not test. I invite. I do not force. I go ahead, and you follow. And each footprint is a promise that you will come out of the fire not because you are strong, but because I lead. When you enter the fire, you think only of survival. You do not expect reward. You do not think of harvest. You only want to escape. You ask me to take the fire away, because in your eyes, fire is the place of loss, loss of time, loss of peace, loss of people, loss of plans. But in my eyes, fire is not the house of loss, but the workshop of gain. Not everything that burns is a defeat. Many things burn so that you may win. When the fire is out, you do not step out as one diminished, but as one who has received more. What you have after the fire is something you could never have gained in peace. In ordinary days, you live by your own strength. But in the fire, you learn to live by me. That births a new kind of courage, not the courage of one who does not fear, but of one who has walked through fire and knows they are not alone. This courage is not loud, not boastful, not craving attention. It rests in the quiet of the heart. In the firmness of each step, you become different. Not someone who never gets wounded, but someone who knows wounds are not the end. Not someone who never trembles, but someone who knows trembling can still stand. You emerge from the fire not with less, but with more courage. Not only courage, you emerge with discernment. Fire teaches you what peace cannot, how to know what is true and what is false. Things that once dazzled your eyes now lose their shine, and things that seemed small appear like gold. Before, you were drawn to noise, to surface, to quick promises. After the fire, you see through them. You are no longer deceived by the coat of paint. You know what carries weight. You know, my voice among many voices. Fire teaches your ears to hear. Not everything that calls you is good. Fire teaches you to choose. And then comes depth. Some people travel through life only on the surface, but those who walk through fire go deeper, not because they are smarter or more moral, but because they dared to ask the question others avoid. What remains when everything burns? That question opens a well in the soul. You touch soil you would never dig in normal days. It is there that the water begins to rise, not water of theory, but water of experience. You no longer only say, God is faithful. You know He is faithful. Not only that, He is with me. You have felt His breath in the fire. Your depth does not come from pages, but from companionship. The paradox is this: what you thought would take everything from you actually gave you back yourself. Fire does not steal, fire restores. Not to restore naivete, but to restore true essence, not coal, but diamond. Coal and diamond are both carbon, yet they differ in pressure and flame. Pressure does not destroy diamond, pressure creates diamond. You entered the fire like cold dark, quiet, fragile. You came out like diamond hard, bright, rare, not because you are better than others, but because I placed in you a potential that needs fire to be revealed. People look at you and do not know the reason, yet they feel in you a new depth, a light that does not come from memorized lessons, but from experience. So you do not come out with less, but with more. You do not lose yourself in the fire, you find yourself. Every peace you have after the fire is deeper than the peace before. Every laugh after the fire rings louder than every laugh before. Every prayer after the fire is truer than every prayer before. You do not step out like someone who barely escaped death, but like someone newly born. And in my eyes, that is the most beautiful thing. You become the person I have always seen. The first thought you have when fire arrives is, I will lose. Lose relationships, lose opportunities, lose reputation, lose familiar safety. Your fear is not the fire itself, but the feeling of being stripped. You think fire comes to steal, to take from your hands what you need to survive. But as I walk with you through the heat, you begin to see another truth. Fire does not take your true self. Fire only consumes the dust that has settled on your soul from long journeys. You are gold, but gold lying long in dust becomes dull, tarnished, dim. Fire does not harm gold. Fire makes gold gold again. When the temperature rises, It is not you who disappear, it is what is not you that disappears. Many things have clung to your life lightly as mist, but over time became thick layers, people's judgments, others' expectations, nameless fears, unhealed memories, sins forgiven but still worn like an old coat. You became so used to them that you thought, "This is me." But fire clarifies that is not you, only dust. When the fire touches, the dust rises like smoke. It vanishes, no longer clinging to the surface of your soul. You think you are breaking, but in truth only dust is leaving. The gold within remains. I do not come to break you, I come to wipe you clean. Some days you feel exhausted simply because you are trying to carry what was never meant to be yours. Not other people, not the future, not your plans, just dust opinions, comparisons, shame, self-blame. Fire touches, and these things cannot endure. They burst apart, turn to ash, and disappear in the wind. You take a deep breath and marvel that your heart feels lighter, not because circumstances suddenly improved, but because you are no longer carrying what is not truly yourself. Fire does what gentle words cannot. It removes what you have held too long. And when these things are gone, you discover yourself brighter without knowing when it happened. When the dust settles, your heart hears more clearly. You hear my voice not through thick layers, not through self-criticism, but directly, clearly. Before, I spoke, but you could not hear, not because I was silent, but because dust had clogged the ears of your soul. After the fire, my breeze blows, my breath passes, and you perceive it. A light wind across your mind is enough for you to know I am near. You no longer need thunder to believe I am present. A single current of peace is enough. Fire teaches you to recognize me not only in great power, but in gentle breath. When dust is gone, every drop of light gets through. The strange thing is this: you do not remember the exact moment when the dust fell. There was no dramatic scene, no explosion. Just one afternoon, you realize you are no longer tired when seeing someone who once hurt you. One morning, your heart no longer trembles when you think of the future. One night, tears fall not from fear, but from gratitude. Not every wound is healed by sudden miracle. Many wounds are healed by fire and wind heat to separate. Wind to cool. You are washed by both, and when you emerge, your soul is like a mirror wiped clean, its shape the same, but its reflection clearer, deeper, truer. Fire does not make you less, fire makes you yourself. On your own, you could not remove the dust. You tried with reason, with determination, with forgetting. But dust clings to places your hands cannot reach: memory, fear, dignity. I enter the fire not to supervise you, but to help clean you. I touch where no one else sees, and the heat of my presence does not hurt you. It only melts what is not you. When you step out, you witness the miracle. Something fell away, yet nothing was lost. Only clarity remains, clean within, light. Like a soul taking its first breath of wind after a storm, there are things you mourn for a long time: a relationship that once brought you joy, an opportunity you had pinned your hopes on, a dream you cherished like a treasure. When they left, you called it loss. You stared at the empty space and your heart tightened as if a part of you had been torn away. You asked why I allowed it, why that green season ended so abruptly, why the shade you were used to disappeared just as the sun began to burn. But when the fire has passed, you see, Many things fall away not because they are bad, but because they have finished their role. Like the shell of a seed, they protect for a time, but if they cling forever, the seed will never sprout. A seed is not alive to preserve its shape, it lives to break out of itself. A hard shell is grace for one season, but a burden for the next. When fire touches, the shell dries and falls, and the seed appears soft, vulnerable, yet full of living potential. What you call loss is really transition. What you see as an ending is actually a beginning. I do not take from you what is life. I only remove what has completed its sheltering purpose. Not because I am unkind, but because, if it remained, it would become a chain. Not because I want you to hurt, but because I want you to grow, like Jonah sitting under his vine, rejoicing in its shade, then shocked when it vanished. You too have moments of asking me, why did you take away what made me comfortable? But I did not forget you under the sun. I did not destroy, I redirected. That plant was not the destination, only a temporary shelter. And temporary shelters must come down so you can keep walking. You thought you were losing shade, but you were really being led to water. You thought you were abandoned under heat, but I was bringing you under my own shadow. My shadow is larger than every tree you have ever known. What is interesting is that you only remember the shade, you forget you lived before it grew. You forget that life comes not from the plant, but from me. When the plant dries, you think I have dried. When the shade is gone, you think I have gone. But I do not change. The shell falls not because the life within is weak, but because the life within is so strong, it needs room. You can thank what is past, but you cannot build a house under shade. Every season has its beauty. And the beauty of this one is the bareness, no shell. No cover, only you and me. And my wind passing through your soul like a promise. When that realization comes, you no longer weep because of loss. You weep because you are free. No longer clinging to what is finished. No longer forcing yourself to stay under a dried tree. No longer gripping a hardened shell. Release becomes worship. Not worship of loss, but worship of the one who kept you through every season. You learn to give thanks not only for what is beautiful, but for what is right. You see grace in both the fallen shell and the living seed. You see me in both shade and sunlight, and as your heart opens, you enter the new season, light as a child, hands unbound, feet untroubled, heart unburdened. Not every cry sounds like thunder. Often you no longer have strength for strong prayers, only a thin breath like a wisp of smoke escaping in the heat of life. You think no one hears it, because even you cannot gather words. But I hear it. I hear every small groan, not through your lips, but through your heart, while fire blazes and ash flies. The tear on your eyelash does not vanish. It glimmers like a bead of glass in the flames. And I see it. I do not take my eyes off you, even when your head is bowed, unable to look up. Sometimes you wait for a dramatic miracle, the fire to stop, the storm to end, the doors to swing wide. But the miracle I give in those moments is not the changing of scenes. It is the nearness that does not leave. I do not always put out the flames, but I stay close enough that the ashes do not cling to your soul. You look for power outside your life, but I bring power into your breathing. Strength is not found in spectacle, but in the truth that you are not alone. I stand inside the fire, my eyes fixed on you through the smoke. You tremble, but I stand firm. Your breath shortens, but my breath surrounds you. Once you sense this, fire no longer equals destruction. It becomes the setting for closeness. You no longer try to escape at any cost. You begin to sense a strange peace at the hottest place. Not because the fire cools, but because I am near. My presence is shade that does not come from a tree, but from the heart of the one who stands beside you. Every groan, every tear, every sharp breath reaches me, and I answer by staying. You once thought I had to change the circumstance to prove my love, but I proved my love by not leaving you in it. Many people see only the fire, but I see you in it. The flames do not blind me. In fact, they make my eyes stand out more. You see my eyes in the ashes looking at you with quiet, powerful affection. Eyes that do not judge, do not hurry, do not grow disappointed. Eyes that say, I am here, not as a promise for the future, but as a fact of the present. What you need is not an answer yet, but a presence now, and that is what I give. I fill the space between you and your fear with myself. After many long nights, when you step out of the fire, what you remember is not the heat, but the gaze. You remember my breath on your forehead. You remember the hand that did not let go. You remember the feeling of being seen, being heard. Even when you thought no one noticed, the fire passes, but the memory of closeness remains. Not thunder, but presence healed you. Not an explosive miracle, but eyes in the ash, walking beside you. And when you breathe deeply in the new light, you whisper, I was never alone. You were there. Pain does not come like a brutal invader, though at first you always see it that way. Pain makes you fold in, guard your chest, hold your soul as if someone were trying to steal it. You fear it. You plead for it to go. But pain is not a hidden enemy trying to destroy you. It is a teacher who walks into the classroom when all other noise has died down. It does not lecture with theory, but with sensation, where the heart beats faster, where breath grows heavy. It is in those moments you begin to learn what you would never learn. In ease you need me. Not because you are weak, but because my love is the source of your life. Like a tree bending in the storm, not to break, but to root itself deeper. Pain forces you not to stand on thin soil, but to sink into the place where living water flows. You once prayed, make me strong, and you assumed strength would come through an easy life. But any tree grown in gentle sun, without wind, without rain, becomes brittle. Storm winds shake the trunk. Every fiber aches, but those tremors create resilience. Pain does the same in your soul. It makes you pause, makes you look back, makes you ask questions you normally ignore. You thought pain opposed you. In truth, it opposed what was opposing you. It separates false from true, temporary from eternal. The psalm says, it is good for me that I was afflicted, so that I might learn your decrees. You read it with the mind, but only in fire did you hear it with the heart. I do not send pain to punish you. I do not delight in your cries. I do not need your tears to feel loved, but I know this in long stretches of ease. You often drift far from me without realizing it. When everything is smooth, you lean on your own strength. You run on willpower. You forget your source. I am still there, but my voice is soft while the noise of life is loud. Pain turns down the volume of the world not because I shout louder, but because everything else grows quiet. You begin to hear me, not with your ears, but with your soul. You start to realize pain is not the goal, It is the road, and that road brings you back to me, slowly, gently, one breathed step at a time. The strange thing is, when pain becomes a teacher, it brings lessons you never knew you needed. You learn humility that you do not control everything. You learn dependence that I keep working when you are helpless. You learn discernment that what is comfortable is not always good, and what is difficult is not always bad. You learn to love more deeply, because the wound itself softens the heart. You look at others who are hurting, and compassion flows from you in ways it never did before. Pain opens the door of the heart, not so that cold wind can rush in, but so that gentle light can step through. You thought the crack was failure. In truth, it is the place the light passes. When you begin to understand this, you stop running from pain as though from a monster. You sit with it not to torment yourself, but to ask, what are you teaching me through this? And in the silence you realize I did not abandon you in the fire. I did not lead you in and then stand far away. I am near correcting your course, guarding your heart, wiping your tears. Pain becomes a classroom where I am the teacher and you are the only student. No one else understands your lesson quite like you. No one else has to walk through your flames. But I walk with you, and like a tree bent in the wind, you end up standing firmer, more beautiful, deeper. When the fire dies down, what remains is not ashes, but roots that cling tightly to my love. In the fire, the first thing that seems to lock up is not your strength, but your breath. You inhale and your chest tightens as if the air has been taken away. You try to breathe in again, but heat, smoke, and fear make each breath heavy. You think you need air, but what you really need is faith. Faith is the breath of the soul when you breathe with fear. The fire seems bigger when you breathe with trust. The fire does not change, but your heart does. The flames do not soften, but your chest opens, receiving another kind of air, the breath of life that I am blowing in. There are moments when you feel you will stop breathing from sheer exhaustion, not because you have no lungs left, but because you have spent so much breath fighting. You fight thoughts. You fight memories. You fight outcomes that have not even happened. And your breath thins like a strand of thread. I see your effort, and I do not come to tell you, stop breathing. I come to teach you how to breathe again. I place an invisible hand upon your chest not to restrain, but to remind. I whisper very softly, breathe in, take me in, push the fear out. And you do it not by technique, but by surrender. Faith is not always a shout. Faith is a deep, honest breath right in the middle of the flames. You have often believed that faith must be a fiery battle cry in the heart of the fight. But faith also has another form, quiet, steady, enduring like a rhythm of breath amid the smoke. You will not always stand tall with sword raised. Many times you will simply stand there, hands hanging, eyes burning, but still breathing. And each breath is a prayer without words. I hear every beat, every held breath, every movement in and out. Like Ezekiel looking at the dry bones scattered across the valley, I ask, can these bones live? You answer by breathing each small breath a yes from your soul. Smoke can blur your sight, but it cannot block my breath. I blow life into the places you thought were dead hopes, covered in ash. Promises you believed you no longer deserved. Dreams you buried deep because you were afraid to fail. When I breathe, bone comes to bone. Sinews grow. Flesh covers, and an army rises. You are not a lone struggler in the fire, barely surviving. You are a warrior, raised from ashes by breath that comes from me. Every time you inhale deeply and whisper, "I trust," the bones within you knit together a little more. You used to think that the way to survive hardship was to run out of it as quickly as possible. But the fire is not a predator. The fire is a mold. You do not need to run. You need to breathe. You do not need to become stronger by force. You need to open your chest. Fire teaches you what calm seasons never can, that every breath matters. Not just any breath, but a breath filled with faith. Breathe in, I am here. Breathe out, you are not alone. Breathe in, I am closer than the fire. Breathe out, your heart need not fear. This is not a slogan. This is real life. As you breathe like this, panic begins to soften, not because danger disappears, but because you and the danger are no longer pressed against each other. A small, sacred distance appears between fear and your soul. That distance is faith. It is not a steel wall, it is breath. Yet this breath is stronger than the flames. I do not say this to romanticize your pain, but to reveal a secret: fire only wins when you stop breathing. As long as you keep inhaling me, you live. There are nights when you lie in the red glow of the flames, eyes unable to close, thinking, I don't know if morning will come. I do not come to you with a grand strategy. I come with a rhythm, in and out. In and out. I do not demand that you numb the pain. I teach you to breathe through it. I do not despise your tears. I see them as signs of life. Each drop is salt, and salt keeps the soul from decaying. You thought tears were weakness, but tears in the fire are faith flowing outward. When the fire finally settles and others ask, how did you survive? You will not have a long answer. You will not list strategies. You will simply remember the sense of me being so near that every breath felt like touching me. You will understand that what kept you was not personal toughness, but breathing in the smoke, not a steel will, but soft lungs open to the touch of my spirit. In the fire, you became someone who knows how to breathe with me, and that is life. The fire may lick at your clothes, crack the wood, turn many things to ash, but when it comes to your soul, it meets a boundary it cannot cross. Not because the fire is weak, the fire is fierce, but because I have placed something on you that it does not know how to break my seal. When you stand in the midst of the flames, others see only heat, smoke, and red light. But in the unseen realm, there is an armor of light around you. It is not the armor of a hero, it is the armor of the beloved. That armor makes no clanging sound, no echo of metal on metal, yet it causes the flames to lose their power as they touch you. They come close, roar, and make their demands, but then they recoil as if meeting a strength beyond their comprehension. Long ago I spoke, when you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. That word is not a metaphor, it is spiritual reality. Fire may touch everything else, but when it reaches your soul, it finds nothing to cling to. The strange thing is that you do not see that armor right away. You only see a faint light on your skin. Feel the heat pressing in. Notice your hands shaking, and you assume you are naked before the fire. But I had already put armor on you before the flames ever rose. Not afterward, not halfway through, but long ago in the quiet, like a father putting a warm coat on his child before sending them out into the cold wind. I had wrapped you in my presence. There are things you do not realize. I have prepared prayers from years ago. Small lessons, old victories, the verses of scripture you read and thought you forgot. All of it has become armor. You did not know you were wearing it until the fire came and could not pierce it. Then you understood, I have been equipped, not equipped with steel, but with grace, not equipped by your own strength, but by my nearness. I have never promised that the fire would not hurt. I never said you would pass through without feeling anything. I only promised that the fire would not destroy you. Heat may make the sweat run, may make your eyes sting, may make your heart pound. But I have set a boundary. The fire is not allowed to touch the deepest place. It cannot take your identity. It cannot take the light. It cannot take the trust you have in me. What you think is being burned is only the outer layers. Fire tests everything, but it does not test the soul. The soul is what I keep. Like the 3 men in the furnace of the Babylonian king, their clothes carried the smell of smoke, but not a single hair on their heads was burned. People looked and were astonished, not because the fire was small, but because there was a 4th walking among them. On the day you step out, some will ask, why were you not destroyed by the fire? You will not speak about yourself. You will speak about the one who stood near. Many times you focus so much on the flames that you forget the armor. You stare at what is red hot, at what stings, at what you have lost, and you tremble. But if you looked more closely, you would see another light, the light reflecting off an invisible layer of protection, a warm light, not harsh, not showy, but steady. That light does not come from you, it comes from me. It is like the sun reflecting on the surface of the water. The water is not bright by itself. It shines because it is near the source of light. In the same way, you shine not because you are strong, but because you are near me. Fire can dry out every other source, but it cannot dry out mine. It does not know where that source is. It does not know how to reach it. It only knows that when it draws near to your soul, it weakens. And this is the secret. You are not the one who avoids the fire. You are the one the fire cannot consume. There will be a day when you stand among the ashes and ask, why am I still here? You remember the pain. You remember the flames. You remember what fell away. But deep within there is something untouched. That is not an accident. That is where I put my hand. I place my hand on the part of you I call mine. And I declare, this flame may come near, but it will not cross this line. The enemy thought the fire would take you, but it found only shining armor. The fire burned the chains, but not you. It took the ropes, but not the life. It burned the shell, but not the gold. And on the day you look back, you will know the miracle is not just that you survived, but that you survived and remained soft. You did not turn to stone. You did not become bitter. You kept a heart that can still love. That is the place the fire could not touch. Fire does not only heat, it also shoots invisible arrows. Not everyone who stands at a distance sees this. From the outside, they see only the blaze, see you enduring, see the heat curling around your body. But inside the fire, something else is moving. Thoughts like sharp blades, judgments like thorns, old memories like sparks suddenly flying up. They rush toward you not only to burn, but to pierce. They aim at the deepest, the softest part of you. And there, right there, is where I stand. Not standing far off, not standing behind you, but standing directly in the path of every arrow. There are moments when you hear a whiz in your soul, as though something has been launched straight at your heart. A sentence someone spoke long ago, a lie that once took root, a nameless fear. It flies faster than you can react. You have no time to raise your hand or turn aside. But the arrow does not land. It disappears in midair, as if it hit an invisible wall. You feel a small rush of wind, but no stab, no tear, no bleeding. You think it is luck. You call it resilience. But I know the truth, that arrow struck me before it ever reached you. Not every wound comes from external fire. Some come from within, from memory, from self-judgment, from the words you whisper to yourself when no one knows. Those arrows are often the sharpest, and I let them strike me first. I hear your voice murmuring, self-blame. Why am I so weak? Why can't I get over this faster? I hear those words, and they sink into my heart like real arrows, not to harm me, but so that I may know exactly where you are. It is in that very moment that I lift the shield, a shield not made of iron or bronze, but of presence. It makes no clanging sound, but it drains every arrow of its power. In the heat of the fire, when everything seems to tremble, I do not step back, I step closer. There are seconds when you think you are taking the blows alone, but it is precisely then that I have moved my shoulder forward. The arrows lodge in me, not because I am powerless, but because I choose to cover. I do not only save you from the flames, I save you from the sharp pain of invisible words. You will never know how many arrows were stopped. You will only know this result: you are still standing, still breathing, still tender. And that is the evidence. If the arrows had gone through, your soul would have hardened, soured, grown cold. But you remain soft. You remain sensitive. You still know how to love. That tells you someone has been standing at the point of impact. Every arrow aimed at you must pass through me first. There is no shortcut. There is no gap. I am not in the place of an observer. I am in the place of a shield. That image is not just a simple metaphor. When I say, I am your shield and your buckler, I am speaking of the very moment when the fire releases its arrows. When they threw the 3 young men into the furnace, it was not only flames that were present, there was one like a son of God standing among them, not standing there merely to comfort, but to shield. The fire burned the ropes, but not their skin. The king's words, sharp as spears, did not pierce through, because there was one standing in front. There are nights when you hear doubt in your own mind. No one is on my side. That voice is an arrow. It speeds toward your heart. But before it reaches you, I speak, I am here. And the arrow dies out in the flames. That does not make the fire smaller. The fire still blazes. But fear shrinks. You feel a strange peace spreading in your chest. Not because the circumstances have changed, but because someone has taken the most dangerous blow. You are shielded. You are carried. Not because you are strong, but because I chose the place of the shield. There will be a day when you ask, why did I not shatter? I will answer, not with a theory, but with an image, a shield covered in ash, but not burned. A layer of protection you cannot see with the eye, but more real than any metal. Arrows flew, but they were stopped. Not once, but hundreds of times. You will never know the full number. You will only know this outcome: your heart is still soft. Some walk through fire and become numb, closed, cold. You did not. You hurt, but you love. You weep, but you still believe. That is not just how you are. That is the evidence that I have stood between you and the fire. Every time you hear the voice of judgment, comparison, or reminders of failure, remember this: that arrow is not permitted to pierce through. It may fly toward you, but it will stop at me. You may feel the wind, but not the wound. You may see sparks, but not the burn. I have absorbed every arrow so that your tenderness could remain, so that you would not turn into the ash of bitterness. You are kept whole not because you are resilient, but because I have shielded you first. When you look back at the furnace of your life, you will know that the miracle was not that arrows never came, but that they struck me before they ever reached you. There were nights when you looked around and thought the violence was consuming you. Everything felt red hot. Everything burning. Everything seemed to scorch the smallest places in you. You thought the fire was eating away your life, like a whirlwind of flames spiraling into your marrow, leaving no room to breathe. And yet, in the midst of that blazing red, I simply whispered, "You are not burning, you are shining." The fire outside deceived you, but what I was doing was lighting a torch from within. That flame does not consume, it illuminates. You are not diminishing, you are emerging. People see that light and marvel, because they were used to seeing you tremble, but now you stand. Not because the fire has died, but because the light has been ignited. Every step you take across the ashes is not the step of a victim, but of one carrying a torch. In the flames, there are moments when you hear the cracking of what is old. You think it is the sound of yourself breaking. But when you listen more closely, you notice something different. It is not you who are breaking. It is the layers that covered the light. Pressure does not destroy gold. Pressure reveals gold. So it is with you. The fire is not erasing you. It is peeling away what has concealed you. Things that once clung to you, dust of years, unnamed shame. Sharp shards of comparison begin to fall away, not because you strain, but because heat cannot hold them anymore. You thought you were wearing down, but the truest part was being uncovered. What used to seem important no longer holds weight. The opinions of others no longer carry the same heaviness. What remains is not appearance, but the heat of truth. You thought you were losing beauty, but true beauty was just being born. When you look back, it is like a burning bush that does not burn up. The flames wrap around it, yet the leaves do not fall. Not because the bush is strong, but because someone is standing in the flames. That presence does not make the fire disappear. It makes the fire lose its power to destroy. You become a living testimony of paradox burning, yet not consumed. Some will look at you and say, "You must be exhausted." You do not deny the weariness, but you know something deeper. There is another kind of energy flowing within you, not from willpower, not from pride, but from the one who stands with you in the flames. That source makes your eyes shine even when circumstances are dark. That source makes you stand even when the ground trembles. You shine not with your own light, but with mine, reflected through a fragile vessel, and that very fragility becomes the perfect lantern for the light to pass through. There are moments in the fire when you sense you have become different. Not different in appearance, but different inside. You begin to see clearly what you could not see before: what is true, what is false, what is lasting, what is fleeting. You once tried to hold on to everything: reputation, impression, acceptance, as if they were breath itself. But in the fire, everything that is unnecessary is burned away, and what remains becomes precious. You grow lighter not because you lack anything, but because you are no longer carrying what was never yours. You thought the fire was taking from you, but it only took what you did not need. What remains cannot be bought by the world: a heart that is passionate but not bitter, a mind that is alert but not suspicious, a soul that is tender but not broken. You are not burned into ash. You are becoming a torch that the night must make room for. When the flames settle, you do not step out like someone escaping disaster. You step out like someone who has been anointed. Others look at you and cannot understand why there is a glow in your eyes. They did not hear the cracking inside you. They did not see the moments you almost fell. They did not feel your heavy breaths. But they see something strange. You shine. Not in a dazzling way that tires others, but like the moon in the night, gentle, quiet, yet enough to lead. You do not need to explain. You do not need to prove anything. Your light is the evidence. You are not burning to die. You are burning to guide, not to show yourself, but so the lost in the night can see a path. Fire does not make you a burden. It makes you a source. There will be days when you look at yourself in the flames and think you have become someone entirely new. You feel stronger, bolder, deeper, and you think, perhaps the fire has turned me into another person. But I want you to know something deeper. Fire does not create a new essence. Fire reveals the essence that was always there. You always had gold in your depths. But when life was calm, the gold was covered by dirt, by dust, by distraction. When the flames came, the dust rose and fell away, and the gold began to appear. What you thought was change was actually revelation. You did not become someone else. You became more yourself. The fire does not ignite a new soul. It lights up the soul I placed there. When you understand this, you will no longer fear the fire as before. You will not see it as a destroyer, but as a jeweler. It does not come to take precious things. It comes to take what hides the precious things. You once judged yourself by weak moments, by collapses, by wrong choices, and you believed your essence was brokenness. But in the flames, when you no longer have strength to pretend, when the masks fall away, I show you what is real faithfulness, kindness, patience, compassion, resilience. These were in you all along, but you could not see them clearly when life was easy. In the heat, they sparkle. Like coal under long pressure becomes diamond. So it is with you. Fire does not make diamonds. Pressure reveals diamonds. You stand straighter not because you lift yourself, but because you see what I see in you. Not arrogance, but honor for what I have placed. You do not exaggerate yourself. You simply no longer diminish yourself. You no longer call yourself by dark names, because what comes from me cannot be defined by wounds. Fire teaches you to discern what to release, what to keep, and when you keep what is true, you stand tall, not standing on your perfection, but standing on truth. I have placed fine gold within you. The light reflected from you is not pride, but reverence. Others see it and are lifted not by words, but by presence, not because you are perfect, but because you are genuine. There are some things that can only be learned in the fire, not in the cool garden. When you stood outside, you easily believed everyone had to be strong the way you imagined, decisive, always overcoming. But when you walk through heat, when you feel the warmth soften your heart, you begin to see others with different eyes, no longer with judgment, but with understanding. It is as though your eyes were washed with tears, pride dissolved, and you can see clearly everyone carries a battle unseen by the outside world. You become slower to judge, slower to conclude, slower to speak harshly, not because you are weak, but because the fire has taught you about your own fragility and the endurance that only grace can produce. You begin to realize that no one goes through life with clean hands. Everyone has scratches. Everyone has scars. Everyone has trembled in the night believing they were alone, and that realization softens your heart. Fire does not make you bitter toward those who do not understand you. Fire makes you love them more. For you know if they could see what you went through, they would lay a hand on your shoulder instead of whispering. If they heard the faint groan of your heart in the night, they would sit beside you in silence instead of offering advice. Fire opens your eyes to the truth. Behind someone's smile may be a fracture no one knows, and behind coldness may be a tired heart, and you no longer rush to conclusions. What once irritated you in others now becomes a reminder they may be in a fire of their own. Not every fire looks the same. Some burn quietly within. Some blaze through circumstances, and when you know this, you become gentler. You speak softer. You forgive faster. Not because you force yourself to be good, but because you remember you once needed arms, not judgment. I stood beside you when no one stood. I sheltered you quietly when no one understood. And now, you become more like me. You stand beside others. You are not weak. You are tender-hearted. That tenderness does not come from failure, but from refinement. The way you see people changes not because you lose standards, but because you gain compassion. You still see right and wrong, but you choose to lead with mercy, not with a whip. You know that people do not need more pressure. They need someone who believes they can rise again. After the furnace, your eyes carry warmth. Others feel safe near you, as if standing by a hearth in the cold night, not because everything is perfect, but because someone has kept the fire. There is a profound difference between a light that has never known night and a light that has walked through night. The first is beautiful, but fragile. The second is steady and gentle. When you walk through fire and still stand, you do not merely survive, you become light. Not the light of pride or display, but the light of someone who knows darkness is not the end. You no longer fear the dark the way you once did, because you have seen someone standing in it with you. And now, when night settles over another life, you do not run away, you enter, carrying a torch, not to make noise, but to give enough light for someone to take one more step. People look at you and cannot understand how you can be so calm in situations that would break others. It is not because you are stronger than they are, but because the fire has taught you a lesson no book can teach. There are victories in silence. The light in you is not fireworks, it is the torch of a warrior in the night, raising his arm, standing upright, keeping the flame alive. Sometimes that torch looks small, but it is enough for the lost to find their way. After the furnace, you no longer feel the need to prove anything. You only want to shine, not for reputation, but for love. You do not say, "Look at me." You say, "Look at the way." You thought you would leave the fire with only ashes, but when you stepped out, you found a mission. You realized that some people do not need sermons. They need to see someone who has walked through fire and still believes. The light within you becomes evidence. Every scar on your soul is no longer something to hide. They become marks that I was there. People trust you not because you are flawless, but because you are real. And that reality shines. You enter a room full of anxiety, and without speaking much, without demanding anything, your presence alters the air. Light carries the scent of peace. Light has a gentle melody. Light has the heartbeat of faith. When you hold the torch, you do not tremble, not because the night is less dark, but because you know who stands behind the flame. Your boldness is not fierce, it is kind. Not a weak kindness, but a quiet, patient, strong kindness. You do not force anyone to move, but you stand firm, and in your standing, others find strength. This is not a role you chose, it is a role the fire has given back to you. You do not become light to draw people to yourself, you become light to lead them to me. That light is not a reward, it is an assignment. You carry it not because you are special, but because you have been refined. When the season of fire closes, the first thing you receive is an unusual silence. No more cracking, no more hissing, no hot breath against your face, only a deep quiet. Like a lake after a storm has passed, you touch your clothing, almost unable to believe no burn marks, no smell of smoke, no sign that you have walked through something fierce. You expected ashes, yet what you see is brightness. You thought you would step out with remnants. I let you step out with glory. You did not merely survive. You carry a different fragrance, the fragrance of victory. Not loud, not arrogant, but quiet, deep. Steady, the victory of someone who knows only grace can keep a person in the furnace. When others look at you, they are surprised. They say, "You do not look like someone who has suffered." And they are right, because the fire did not cling to you. The flames touched circumstances, but I kept them from your soul. There are no burn marks on your clothing, no smell of smoke in your hair, no bitterness in your eyes, only light. As in the ancient story, when those thrown into the furnace came out, people drew near to examine them and were astonished. Their clothes were not singed. Their hair was not burned. There was not even the smell of smoke on them. That was not their skill. It was the evidence of presence. People see no burns on you, but they see glory. Not your glory, but the glory of the one who walked with you. The strange thing is, this fire has cleansed, but not scorched. Fire burned the ropes, but did not burn the flesh. It destroyed what bound you, but it did not destroy you. This is the paradox I use to reveal. My nature, I do not need to avoid the fire to protect you. I make the fire serve my purpose. You emerge not as someone rescued at the last second, but as someone prepared, anointed, and fortified for what lies ahead. There are no burn marks, but there is still heat, not the heat of affliction, but the heat of zeal. The flames did not leave wounds, they left radiance. You look back at the furnace where you once trembled, and you do not see weakness, you see grace. There were moments in the flames when you thought, "This will break me." But when you step out, you look at yourself and see something else. This has made me strong. Not strong by strain, but strong by calm. Steady, quiet endurance. You are no longer easily broken, not because you are rigid, but because you are flexible in the right places. Fire teaches you to bend, not to snap. And when the winds of life blow, you do not shatter, you sway and then stand. Like a tree that has known storms, there is no smell of smoke on you, but there is an echo of glory. It is not the sound of cheering crowds, but the deep breath of a soul that knows I was kept. You do not tell the story of fire to invite pity. You tell it to awaken hope. When someone asks, "How did you get through?" you do not speak only of yourself. You speak of the one who was in the fire. The story is not centered on pain, but on companionship. Listeners do not leave thinking life is hard. They leave knowing God is near. That is glory, not that you are seen, but that He is recognized. On the day you stepped out of the furnace, you walked with a different posture, not with pride, but with the posture of one who has found a refuge. You do not boast how much you endured, you boast how much he sustained. And so you do not carry the smell of ashes, you carry the fragrance of a song. That song needs no music, no instrument, no crowd. It only needs a breath and a memory. When you remember, he was there. The song rises by itself. When you remember he touched you in the fire, your heart softens by itself. When you remember your clothes were not singed, your mouth gives thanks by itself. Here is the secret: the song does not come when you understand everything. The song comes when you know he is enough. The smell of burning vanishes, but the song remains. Others may not know the details, but they can sense peace spreading from you. That peace does not come because everything is fine, but because he kept you when things were not fine. It is not that your life is calm, it is that your heart is calm. It is not that you never trembled, it is that he held you when you trembled. It is not that the fire is gone forever, it is that he proved that even if the fire remains, you are not alone. That makes your steps light, your breathing deep, your eyes bright, and as you walk through the world, people catch a scent of glory without knowing how to name it. They ask, "Why are you so at peace?" You do not answer with theory. You answer with one simple sentence: because he was there with me. Nothing more. Truth speaks for itself. There is no smell of smoke, but there is the fragrance of a hearth, warm, quiet, safe. It is the sign of someone who went through fire with the one standing in the midst, not the person who avoided fire, but the person who was kept in fire. When others look at you now, they only see the surface. They see fruit, but not the season of sowing. They see light, but not the long night. They see you standing strong, but they do not know there were nights you lay on the floor, arms around your chest, trying to breathe in the heat. And one small whispered sentence kept you from breaking: "Stay with me." Others see the smile on your face and think it came naturally, but you know that smile was once forged in flame. People admire your peace, but your peace was once needed out of panic. And it was in those unseen moments that you met me truly. There is an intimacy only fire can create, not the intimacy of polished words, not the softness of surface encouragement, but the intimacy of the moment when you have nothing left to perform. When fire melts the layers, you cannot act anymore. You cannot keep posture. You are only yourself, not the edited version, not the perfect image, not the strong face, just the naked soul. And it is there that I draw near, not to judge, not to criticize, but to touch. No wall stands between us in the furnace, because every wall has melted. In the fire you discover this: I love you not because you succeeded, but because you are true. There are moments only you and I know, small groans no one hears, but I hear, trembling breaths in the night no one sees, but I see, not the shout, not the strong prayer, but the whispers you thought evaporated into the air. I gather everyone in the hottest place. When you have no words, I become your words. When you have no strength, I become your breath. When you think you have lost everything, I become everything. Not when you stood before a crowd, but when you stood alone before the fire. You met me, and you know something others do not. Not every miracle is loud. Some miracles are not the opening of doors, but the opening of the heart. Some miracles are not the extinguishing of fire, but the extinguishing of fear. Some miracles are not the end of pain, but the end of the thought, I am alone. That is the deepest miracle. You no longer pray, make the fire disappear. You begin to pray, do not leave me. And when you pray like that, you touch the center of the holy. I did not come to erase all pain. I came to step into the middle of it. Others see only the last chapter. They see you walk out without the smell of smoke and think, you are lucky. But you know, it was not luck. You know the smell of ashes once pressed against your face. You remember the heat on your skin, your lips drying, your eyes burning. You remember the moment you thought you would break. No one told you then that I was standing so close that my shadow fell over your shadow. Not because you imagined it, because you experienced it. 2 shadows in the flame, not one. My intimacy is not a distant promise, but a near presence. Not theories written down, but breaths you felt. You came to know me in a depth no book could teach. I did not come to lecture. I came to accompany. And when you walked out, what you remembered was not the fire, but the one who stood in the fire. That memory becomes holy memory, not the memory of affliction, but the memory of companionship. When someone asks, when did you meet him? You do not speak of church buildings or gatherings or big events. You say, in the fire, because when every other place failed to hold you, I held you in the place you thought was the end. Here is the secret only you and I know. The fire did not take you from me. The fire brought you closer to me. When you thought the fire was destroying, it was actually opening. When you thought the fire was separating, it was actually reconnecting. When you thought the fire was taking, it was actually giving. In the place where nothing could be hidden, where there was no strength left to pretend, where tears were as hot as iron, you met me, not the God of theory, but the God of reality, not the God of songs, but the God of presence. Now you understand why those who come out of the furnace sing, not because they do not know fire, but because they know him in the fire, not because life became easy, but because the heart became steady, not because pain vanished, but because pain was placed into a stronger hand. In that hand, you do not have to break. In that hand, you do not need explanations. In that hand, you do not need masks or perfect words. You only need honesty. And from honesty, love flows. Others will see the glory on the outside, but you know where that glory was forged. They will see the light, but you know that light mingled with flame. They will see the result, but you know the process. And in that process, you came to know me truly. You know my voice in the wind of the furnace. You know my hand in the heat. You know my eyes through the blur of ash. Not a frightening memory, but a sacred one, because it was there that love became real. People look at you and say, you are so strong. You smile softly and think, not strong, just close. What you learned in the fire was not how to endure, but how to lean, not how to clench your jaw, but how to rest, not how to escape, but how to remain. And it was the remaining that made you shine. Now that you stand on the other side, do not imagine that the fire is gone forever. Life never promised that. But the fire has lost its old authority. The old fear has died. You no longer walk with the posture of someone trying to avoid every hardship like a fugitive. You walk as someone who knows a secret. The secret is not that the fire disappears, but that I am present. You do not need to tighten your shoulders, grit your teeth, or rush with a pounding heart. You only need to hold my hand. There will still be flames ahead, but you will not stand in them alone. It is not that you have become stronger, but that you have become nearer. This new boldness is not loud, it is steady, not the steadiness of pride, but of someone who knows where shelter is. Some believe that faith is a shield that keeps every flame away. It is not. Faith is the hand that holds mine in the midst of the fire. Faith does not avoid hardship. Faith walks through it without being consumed. Faith is not an easy life. Faith is peace in the middle of difficulty. And you, after all that you have been through, have learned this. You walk with different footsteps now. There is no haste, no panic. You walk as one who believes that every step is guided, that no fire burns outside my sight, that no heat exceeds my breath. You remember the testimony of those before you, those who passed through by faith and were not destroyed. Hebrews speaks of them as a great cloud of witnesses. And now you know you are not alone on the journey of trust. You will meet trials, you will, but when they come, you no longer fear them as before. You no longer hear the crackle of fire as a threat, but as a call to come closer. The fire has become a meeting place. When heat rises, you no longer think, "This will break me." You think, "Here, I will meet him." The flame becomes a doorway, not a wall. What others avoid, you step into not out of recklessness, but out of experience. You have discovered the strange truth in the place you thought was the end. I was waiting, so walk on, without trembling. Walk on, not because you possess great courage, but because you hold a great hand. Every flame ahead is not a threat, but a lesson, an opportunity for the gold within you to shine. It is not perfection that makes you radiant, but truth. When you are honest about fear, I draw near. When you are honest about weariness, I lift you. When you are honest about weakness, I become your strength. This is how a spiritual warrior is formed, not from cold steel, but from a tender heart placed in my hands. Now you can look at the fire without shrinking back. You stand upright, breathe deeply, remember what has passed, and step forward, not with hardness, but with peace that seeps from within. You know you are seen. You know you are held. You know no flame can pull you from my hand. So, my child, walk on. Do not avoid the fire, walk with me in every flame. Today's fire is not greater than I am. Tomorrow's will not be either. The future does not confuse me. And if I hold your hand, no furnace can consume you. Go, child, without shaking, without proving yourself, without trying to be strong, only be near. Let my breath lead you. Let my gaze guide you. You will see that every flame along the road does not burn you, but lights you, and that light is not for boasting, but for guidance. There are people walking in shadows, waiting for someone to carry a torch, not someone who has never hurt, but someone who has gone through fire with me. You are that flame. Walk on. But before you walk on, I want you to look at the fire once more, not with the fearful eyes of yesterday, but with eyes washed by tears and grace. You once thought the fire was the enemy. You once saw it as a sentence. You once begged me to put it out. But now, when the heat has faded into memory, you begin to see that the fire did not come to destroy you, but to reshape you. There were flames you entered before you could catch your breath, everything around you shrinking, and you thought, "I cannot bear this." Yet you stood there, and you did not die. That was not because you were strong, but because I was near. Nearness is not a feeling, but a fact. Even when you could not sense me, I stood beside you. Even when you saw only darkness, I was the hidden light behind the curtain. Even when you prayed and heard no answer, I was breathing over your spirit like a quiet wind in the night. There were nights so silent that you could hear your own heartbeat, and you believed you were completely alone. But you were wrong. I never left you in the furnace by yourself. You simply did not hear my movement, because I was standing in a silence full of power. My silence is not rejection. My silence is the place where you become aware of my breath. The noise of this world always tries to drown out my presence. But in the fire, all noise fades. When heat rises, people speak less. They breathe. And in the heat, every breath becomes prayer. Every drop of sweat becomes proof that you are still here. Still surviving. Still walking. I saw those moments, and I sat beside you. There is something I want you to know. The flames in your life were never random. Not a single spark touched you without my knowledge. Not a single hot wind crossed your face without my intervention to keep it within what you could bear. I am not the one who stands far away, judging from outside. I am the one in the midst, blocking arrows, absorbing blows, standing in the wind so you would not be swept away. You thought you were standing alone, but you were standing in my shadow. And then, in a moment you cannot fully recall, you learned how to breathe in the fire, not with quick gasps, not with panic, but like someone who knows that every breath does not come from fear, but from my life. Every inhale is strength you cannot create. Every exhale is the release of worries I never asked you to carry. That is how a soul is refined, not by lofty philosophy, but by small breaths placed into my hands. I know you are tired. I know there are days you no longer want to fight. I know there were moments when simply standing upright was a miracle. I do not rebuke you for that. I understand. I walked through fire before you. I endured pain, betrayal, loneliness, tears, and the silence of heaven and earth. I know how hot the flames are. I know how your heart trembles. I know what it feels like to stand in the heat while no one sees what is burning inside. But precisely because I know, I do not pull you out too soon. If I take you out of the fire the moment you begin to tremble, the gold has no time to form. If I rescue you the moment you ask, before the hour arrives, you will step out weaker than when you entered. Fire does not linger to punish, it lingers to shape. A cold pan cannot forge iron. A lukewarm flame cannot refine gold. A life without trial cannot produce a soul that has grown in the spirit. You may think I am slow, but I am exact. You may think I am silent, but I am working. Inside the furnace, false things disappear. The surface does not survive. Boasting cannot stand. Only what is true remains. Truth often looks small, humble, simple, but that is what shines. You do not need to prove anything. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to be real. Fire does this. It removes the pretty paint and leaves raw wood. And that raw wood becomes beautiful because of honesty. You no longer have to wear masks. You no longer have to hold everything tight. You begin to release. And when you release, you become light. When you step out of the fire, no one will know what you have endured. They will only see your calm. They will only see the light in your eyes. They will only hear a voice that is quiet but steady. They will think it is personality. They will not know it is grace. They will not know you stood inside the furnace and heard me whisper through the heat, I am here. They will not know that the fire made you beautiful. They will not know that what once seemed it would kill you became the place you met me most truly. And now, when you see others entering their own fire, your heart does not judge. You do not say, "Why are they so weak?" You say, "I understand." You do not stand far away. You draw near. You become shelter for them, not with eloquent explanations, but with presence. You know that not everyone needs answers. Many only need someone to sit beside them. Say nothing. Just be there. You once needed that, and I gave it to you. Now you give it onward. There is something else you must know. Fire does not leave you smelling of ashes. Fire does not destroy your honor. Fire does not leave the residue of failure on your garment. When you step out, there is no smoke, no burn marks, only glory. People will look and be unable to believe. They will ask, "How did you pass through without breaking?" You will smile without boasting, "I did not walk alone." That is the strongest testimony, not the tragic story, not the raging flames, but the presence. And now you stand here, not to look back at the fire with bitterness, but with gratitude. There are things you never wish to live again, yet you would not trade them, not because the fire was pleasant, but because I met you there. The fire made you real. The fire broke pride. The fire chased fear away. The fire taught you love. You learned what no other place could teach. I am enough. So do not tremble when you hear the crackle of fire. Do not think you are returning to the old place. Life is long and strange. There will be hot seasons. But you carry within you the experience of one who has survived. Not survived by shrinking, but by walking. Not survived by avoiding, but by drawing near. Not survived by proving, but by loving. You continue not to impress anyone, but to walk with me. The journey is not to create an image, but to become a bearer of light. Not because you have never known darkness, but because you have walked in darkness with me. To become a bearer of peace, not because your life has been easy, but because, in the difficult places, you were held. To become a bearer of hope, not because you have never known despair, but because in despair you found me. One day, when you look back, you will smile, not because the fire was gentle, but because I was beautiful. You will say, "The fire did not touch my soul. It only touched the chains." You will say, "What seemed an ending was only a beginning." You will say, "The flames did not bury me, they revealed me." And you will know that not a single step was wasted. Not a single tear was meaningless. Not a single breath fell into empty air. I have kept everything. I have used everything. Now, walk, not hurried, not panicked, but steady. You do not need to avoid the fire. You only need to stay near me. Once, whenever you saw a storm on the horizon, your heart tightened. You evaluated everything by feeling, and feelings often magnified fear. A small cloud became a catastrophe. A slight sound became a threat. You lived in defense longer than you realized. You prepared for the worst even when there was no evidence it would come. You wore armor too heavy, not because the battle required it, but because fear demanded it, and that is what made you tired. But after the furnace, when old fears were burned away, something became light within you in a way reason cannot explain. You no longer run ahead of the wind. You no longer slam shut every window in your heart. You no longer brace for every potential disaster, not because you are naive, but because you have seen something deeper. Fear is not a prophet. I am the one who sees ahead. I am the one who knows the path. I am the one who keeps you. There are days when the sky turns gray, and you simply stand still. You are no longer troubled when the sun disappears behind clouds. You have learned that the sun does not vanish, it is simply hidden for a while. And your soul, like the sun, is not lost just because there is a season of shadow. There are things you cannot control. And once that terrified you, but now it makes you exhale. You no longer need to manage everything. You only need to trust. I look at you today and see something different. You no longer avoid depth. Before, you feared your feelings. You feared old wounds. You feared tears. You feared sitting alone. You feared silence. You feared yourself. But after the fire, you do not run. You can sit with your tears without breaking. You can look into the past without collapsing. You can remember what was painful without dying. That is the sign of a soul truly healed. Not healed because the circumstances changed, but because you changed. Healing is not when the fire stops. Healing is when the heart learns to stand in the fire without panic. Healing is not when pain vanishes. Healing is when pain becomes a guide. It leads you to me. It teaches you rightful dependence. It teaches you to let go of excessive self-reliance and hold to sacred reliance. What the world calls weakness, I call trust. There is a moment in the furnace you have never forgotten, not the hottest moment, but the quietest one, when there were no crackles, no roaring, no sense that everything was spinning, only breath, only presence. Only a clear thought, I am not alone. All fear dissolved into one short sentence. You did not need complex philosophy. One simple phrase was enough to hold your soul. That is how I work, not by argument, but by love. When you step out of the fire, you carry that love with you. It does not show off. It does not shout. It does not fight for attention. It is like the warmth that lingers in your clothes after standing near a fireplace. Others can feel it without knowing what to call it. You are not trying to be special. You are simply being true. And it is that very truth that makes you shine. Some will look at you and think, you made it through because you are strong. But your strength did not come from straining. It came from letting go. Letting go is not losing. Letting go is trusting that I will hold you. There are things you cannot fix. There are people you cannot pull along. There are circumstances you cannot change. You once thought that was failure. After the fire, you call it freedom, because you realize there is no power in trying to control what lies beyond your reach. The true power is placing it in my hands. You do not need to make everyone understand you. You do not need to win every conversation. You do not need to prove you are right. You do not need to rescue everyone. You only need to love. That is how I loved you in the fire. I did not explain everything. I was simply there, and my being there was enough. When you walk on, do not worry about facing the fire again. You will. The world does not promise calm, and neither do I. But I promise something more beautiful. I will be in every flame. You do not have to run. You can walk, even sing in the heat, not because you enjoy pain, but because you know who will meet you there. There is a deep peace that the fire leaves behind, not the peace of a gentle beach, but the peace of one who has survived a storm. It is not fragile, it is strong. It is not brittle, it endures. It knows that if another storm comes, it will pass again, not because there is no fear, but because there is a shelter, not because there is no feeling, but because there is someone to lean on. I look into your future and I smile, not because the future is easy, but because the future is full of me. In every choice, I go ahead of you. At every turn, I am waiting. In every wave of heat, I am the shade. In every long night, I am the whisper. In every trial, I am the presence. You do not have to find your way alone. You are not thrown into life and told, figure it out. You are led. You are held by the hand. Remember this, you do not have to be strong to live, but you do have to be near. Strength does not keep you. Nearness keeps you. What holds you is not spiritual muscle, but spiritual breath. You can be weak and still stand. You can tremble and still walk. You can cry and still sing. That is the miracle of nearness, not the miracle of someone who never hurts, but the miracle of someone who is always held. And as you move forward, do not fear the fire when it appears again. Do not say, "Oh no, I am here again." Say instead, "Then I will meet you here." That is not blind optimism, that is holy memory. You have seen the one who stands in the flames. You have touched his garment. You have heard his breath. You have felt his gaze through the haze of ash. And because of that, the fire is no longer foreign ground. It is a meeting place. One day, you will tell someone that you have seen a miracle, not that the fire went out, but that you did not. Not that the furnace cooled, but that your heart did not grow cold. Not that your circumstances changed, but that you changed. The miracle was not that you were spared from the fire, but that you were kept in the fire. That is the deepest kind of miracle, the kind that forms a person who knows how to love deeply, trust deeply, and walk deeply. So keep walking, my child, not running, not afraid. Walk with the peace of a warrior. You do not need to shout to prove anything. You do not need to wave a sword to intimidate anyone. You only need to carry the torch. That light is enough, and with every step you take, that light will illuminate the path for many others. I go before you. You only need to follow. There will be nights when you lie down without the strength to pray long prayers. Maybe only a single breath, a soft whisper, a single tear remains. Yet I want you to know in those very moments, you are closest to me, not in loud declarations or bold statements, but in the small silence between heartbeats. I once drew near to Jonah when he was exhausted in the belly of the fish. I once drew near to Elijah when he lay beneath the broom tree and wanted to sleep his life away. I once drew near to Peter when he wept in the courtyard, knowing he had fallen. I have drawn near to the weary, and I have never changed. I draw near to you in the same way. At day's end, you may feel like a failure because you did not accomplish as much as you hoped. But when the lights go out and the only thing left in the room is breath, I see something your eyes often miss. You still chose to come back. You still wanted to hear my voice. You still longed to be under my wings. And that is more beautiful than any outward victory. My beloved child, a life is not measured by visible achievements. A life is measured by how the heart is led. There will be days you accomplish much. There will be days you only manage to keep a small pocket of peace in the fire. Both are precious in my eyes. I do not demand that you be strong every day. I only want you near every day. That nearness is the greatest miracle of all. When you are near me, the fire does not win. When you are near me, fear does not rule. When you are near me, you do not lose yourself. You find yourself. One day, you will look back on these years and realize the most beautiful part was not when you stood on mountaintops, but when you took each step in the valley knowing there was a hand beside you. I know the road has not been easy. I know there were nights you felt you had no breath left. I know there are wounds you have not told anyone about. I know there are questions you carry in your chest like a stone beneath your ribs. I know there are disappointments you have learned to hide even from yourself. But I also know that you have never truly let go of me. You may be tired. You may tremble. You may doubt, but your heart keeps turning toward me. And that is what I carve into my memory. Some people look at your life and see only fire. I look at your life and see gold. I see the layers of dust that have been burned away. I see chains that have been severed by the flames. I see wounds that have become pathways for light. You are not merely surviving, you are becoming. I am not only keeping you from breaking, I am shaping you into a bearer of flame. You carry fire without being consumed. You carry heat without being destroyed. The light within you, precisely because it has passed through the fire, can illuminate places that those who have never known pain cannot touch. So now, as you look back, I want you to smile gently, not the forced smile of someone pretending to be strong, but the smile of one who knows they have been kept, lifted, and touched by kindness. You did not walk through this alone. I was there, not only at the entrance of the furnace, not only at the exit, but in the very middle. I did not place you in the fire and stand far away. I stood in the fire with you, so you would know that love does not retreat when the temperature rises. I did not remove you from the fire, I removed the fear from within it. Now that the flame has faded, there is a beautiful quiet, not an empty quiet, but a quiet full of life. A kind of peace that those who have never known storms cannot understand. A kind of stillness that those who have never cried cannot feel. That peace rests in your heart like embers after dawn. It does not demand anything. It simply exists. It speaks in a very small language. You are held. You are known. You are loved. Sometimes I do not say anything grand. I simply place my hand on your shoulder. I simply walk beside you. I simply breathe near. You thought silence meant absence, but for me, silence is a delicate nearness. The soft wind of my presence is enough to keep you standing. My being there is enough to make you see the path. I do not need to shout. I do not need to strain. I only need to be. And my being there has already overcome the fire. You do not return to life with the burden of having to prove something. No one requires you to recount every battle. No one asks you to be strong for the entire world. You only need to keep walking with me, day by day, breath by breath, step by step. Your endurance itself is the miracle. Every morning you choose to return. Every night you choose to believe. Every time you choose to forgive. Every moment you do not let go of faith. These are the things heaven writes into history. Tomorrow does not need to be perfect. It only needs me. And today, let your soul rest a little. Let your heart be still. Let your breathing be gentle. Let tears fall if they must. Tears do not make you weak. Tears only water the seeds of truth. There are lessons only tears can teach. There are doors only pain can open. And now, I ask you something very softly. Do you trust me? Not trust that I will make everything go your way. Not trust that I will remove every trial. But trust that I will be there. Trust that I will walk with you. Trust that, though flames rise, you will not be left behind. Trust that, though the night is long, morning still comes. Trust that what I do in the fire is more precious than what you think you have lost. I do not promise that your life will have no more furnaces. I promise you will never be alone. And that promise has been true from the beginning until now. If you are trembling, then tremble. If you are tired, then be tired. But do not leave me. Do not leave the light. Do not leave the breath. Do not leave the footsteps that are leading you into deeper communion. I have seen you in the fire, and I will see you in peace. I have held you in the flames, and I will lead you into the next season, a brighter season, a lighter season, a closer season. Now, in the quiet of this room, I touch your heart with a short word, needing no ceremony. You are mine. You have been mine. You will always be mine. Rest in that truth. If your heart agrees, if your soul trembles gently, if something deep within whispers that tomorrow may be brighter than today, then answer not with effort, but with a simple word, a soft breath, I trust you. That is enough. No more is needed. No striving, no proving. I hear, I receive, I hold, and whatever fire remains will not conquer you. Thank you for listening to this message today. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so we may receive living words together. Build unshakable faith and walk in the boundless love of God. Amen.